Good afternoon, colleagues. Imina 35 na legislature Guahan is back from recess. We are now in the second reading file. Senator Amanda Shelton, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 251 into the third reading file to discuss.
And if you can read the title, Madam Secretary, with the authors.
Sure, Bill 251.
Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, I know we just came back from recess, but can we get a quick recess? Sorry.
We are in a
Thank
moment's
you.
recess. It's 252. Imina 35 na legislature in Guahan is back from recess. Legislative Secretary, can we have a correction? I apologize. I just want to make sure that we're working with the second reading agenda, and it is 252, so please.
Yes, you're correct, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry I misspoke. It is Bill 252. If I can move that to the third reading file for discussion.
And please read the title.
Bill 252-35 COR, introduced by myself and Senator Joe S. San Augustine, is an act to appropriate $433,000 from the earnings of the yoji Higher Education Endowment Fund to the University of Guam pursuant to Section 221305 of Article 13 of Chapter 22 of Title V of the Guam Code Annotated.
Legislative Secretary, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Bill 252 will provide the University of Guam with the flexibility to further maintain and improve and update its facilities amidst the coronavirus pandemic. As you know, and our colleagues know, the University of Guam has completely transitioned to an online platform for classes in the middle of a semester. And because of the uncertainty that we are faced with in the midst of this crisis, there are still no solid plans to confirm that classes will be in person over the summer or in the coming fall semester. And because of that, this bill number 252 is even more important now than ever. The UOG Higher Education Endowment Fund is funded by the 1998 Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, which establishes revenue for the University of Guam and the Guam Community College through Public Law 25-187, which was authored by the late Speaker Ben Pangilinan. The public law was created to fund the amounts provided by the proceeds of the Guam Economic Development Authority Tobacco Settlement Asset-Backed Bonds Series 2001B. The University of Guam last accessed these funds in 2006 and 2008 to develop and modernize the RFK Public Library. And Madam Speaker, at this time, I'd just like to move to add the testimony from the supplemental testimony from the University of Guam into the record and to be placed into the drive by the clerks so that our colleagues can follow along with me.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
Madam Speaker, Bill 252 will allow the University of Guam to tap into these funds once more to elevate financial obligations that existed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic as well. The pandemic has only added to the university's economical strain, and today alternative funding sources are essential to its future and growth and support of University of Guam students. If Bill 252 passes today, the University of Guam will be able to purchase new computers, subscriptions, and training resources to assist in its effort towards adapting to new COVID-19 conditions while also providing students, faculty, and staff with a healthier learning environment. All materials, supplies, and resources will be in compliance with the Guam Economic Development Authority's listings and limitations regarding fund usage. And Madam Speaker, it is very clear in the law what these funds can be used for, and I'll read it out now. A, to purchase of computer equipment, books, subscriptions, periodical materials, and other library supplies and materials. B, training, and C, management of library materials and resources. And as I move to place the supplemental testimony from the University of Guam, a list on page 2 includes what specifically the University of Guam has identified these higher education endowment fund money to be used for. And it's one, to upgrade core campus computer system. This system needs to be replaced because it is the backbone of the university's academic support. Upgrading this system ensures all students, both current and potential online students, have reliable access to both academic programming and available learning resources. Number two, to replace the Micronesian Area Research Center, or as we all know it, MARC, Professional and International Program, PIP, and the RFK Library Generator. They have not been on a redundant backup power system since 2005. Investment in a new generator reestablishes a reliable power system needed to protect the cultural resources and historical documents held in MARC's care. Likewise, a new generator ensures students can access contracted databases and other learning resources at RFK Library during power outages. Number three, professional development and effective online learning. Teaching in an e-learning environment requires different skills and preparation than for traditional lecture and laboratory classes. UOG needs to increase its cadre of professors who are certified to teach online in order to sustain an online program. And Madam Speaker, as I said just a moment ago, all of our classes at the University of Guam have been moved to an online platform, and there is potential in the coming months to have more online classes, or a need for face-to-face classes to continue online, and the professors and staff at the University of Guam require this type of online professional development to learn this new platform and to best serve our students. And number four, to create UOG archives and exhibition portal. Access to research conducted within the region and to other learning resources about the islands of Micronesia need to be improved. Establishing this resource fills a long-requested need by UOG students, island researchers, regional colleges, and other scholars studying at institutions in the U.S. mainland, and helps to fulfill the university's mission and strengthens its commitment to the region's educational partners. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I'd also like to ask our colleagues for their support of this measure for our students at the University of Guam, so that we can provide better resources for them to continue their education and advance our online learning. I'd also like to offer an amendment, Madam Speaker, based on the testimony from the Guam Economic Development Authority during the public hearing. GITA provided the legislature, the committee, with an updated number of available funds, an updated amount for the available funds, and we are allowed to allocate 90% of the interest earned in this account to the University of Guam. And the updated amount that was provided by GITA is $468,318.77. Madam Speaker, if you'll just give me a moment, I got kicked out of the drive. If I can have a moment's recess.
We are in a moment's recess. Imina 35, na legislatura in Guahan is back from recess. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And this is an amendment beginning on line 12 of page 1. In the drive, our colleagues can find it as FA 252 ALS L12 P1. And it reads, Section 2, Appropriations to the University of Guam, the sum of up to strike out $433,000 and to replace that with $468,318.77 is appropriated from the UOG Higher Education Endowment Fund as of fiscal year 2019 to the University of Guam for the purposes enumerated in Section 221305 of Article 13 of Chapter 22 of Title 5 of the Guam Code Annotated, and to allow Legislative Council to make technical changes.
Thank you very much, Legislative Secretary. On the amendment, Senator Biscoli.
Sujos Masi, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment. Gita provided some very thorough testimony on this bill, Bill 252-35 COR. And, just quoting from their testimony, they thanked the body for allowing them to provide testimony and that they fully support this bill with just this recommended edit, that we update this account information and place that in the bill. So that was one of the questions that I had for the sponsor of this bill, is if we were able to make the changes that Gita had requested, and this is exactly what this amendment does. So, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment. I rise in support of the measure, and I ask my colleagues to do the same. Sujos Masi.
Gwen Pobetsu, Senator Lee, anyone else on the amendment? If not, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
That's all for me, ma'am. I ask our colleagues to please support the measure, and I welcome any discussion that will help strengthen the legislation.
Colleagues, we are now on the motion, on the question. Anyone wishing to speak on the main motion? I have Senator Luis Muñoz, Senator Therese Terlaid, and Senator Castro. Senator Luis, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, and I thank the author for allowing it to happen, especially during this pandemic, and the opportunity for them to expand their online learning. The UOG Higher Education Endowment Fund, not to be confused with the UOG Endowment Fund, the section of the law cited in the bill, in the title of the bill, was created by Public Law 25-187. This fund is reserved for the sole benefit of UOG and cannot be used for any other purposes. And according to the committee report as well, 2UOG is in full support of this bill. So, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator Muñoz. Senator Therese Terlahi on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of the bill. At the public hearing, we had asked for a couple things, and so today we are seeing the list from UOG as to how they plan to use the money, and I think that's appropriate. We had also asked how use of this money might impact the planned tuition increase. As you know, they had planned to raise their tuition in August again, and so I had asked if maybe these were items that had already been budgeted, and use of this money for those items instead would allow for a decrease perhaps in the tuition, but they did not predict that. So I just wanted to ask the author if there's any update on that effect on tuition, perhaps, if she would yield.
Legislative Secretary, would you like to yield?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the retiring author for the question. At this time, the testimony from the University of Guam did not include any plans for how it would address the tuition increase or how it would affect the potential tuition increase later this year. But I do know that as of this time, the University of Guam has rolled out a new program called yoji Cares to give certain discounts and rollbacks to fees and to tuition that are meant to help students during this difficult financial time. And there was money given through the CARES Act to individual students at the University of Guam. But to answer the specific question of how this will affect the potential tuition increase and if it's still on track to being implemented in August, I don't have that specific answer at this time.
Thank you, Legislative Secretary. Senator Therese.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the author for yielding to that question. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the list. It looks very appropriate, as I said earlier, and I especially appreciate item number 4, that is to create the UOG Archives and Exhibitions portal. I think many years ago there was some at least of the items that are in MARC were available online, but I think it's I don't know, at least when I was teaching there a few years ago, it seemed to be restricted. Or less were being uploaded. So I'm very glad if there's going to be a portal for the very valuable information that we have at MARC. So I am very much looking forward to that, especially research that has been conducted already. And I always advocated that all that research that is being done is really just not shared enough. And so hopefully this portal will lead to a lot more of us understanding the research that has already been done by these students. So, Sizus Masi to the author for this.
Thank you, Senator Therese. On the main motion, I will recognize Senator Castro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the main motion, I rise in support of Senator Shelton's bill. I do want to state for the record that I found it to be consistent with the particular section in the statute, section 22-1305. I also want to state that I think it's good use of monies given the current pandemic and the conditions that are facing the learning community at the university, particularly the proliferation and the use of online learning resources, platforms like Zoom and some other online materials. But I think it's even more strategic that the university is asking to invest this downrange in terms of I think what's going to happen is they're ultimately going to move to a hybrid environment and quite perhaps to a full online environment for other programs. I think this is good use of limited resources. And I'm particularly grateful to the university and Senator Shelton for sharing the concept of UOG Archives and Exhibitions portal. I think this is important also for the greater community to have access to learning materials so that we can make meaningful and fair use of that material. Madam Speaker, when I was serving at the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, I know that the agency itself was having its struggles with putting together some kind of an online portal that would serve as a big data dumping environment, if you will. I think this is a really good step in that direction. If the university can manage this effectively, perhaps we can look to them to place other materials that were developed using public funds. And Madam Speaker, I'm referencing materials that we provide or develop in terms of those products that come out because we invest in them, things like grants that come out of GVB. You know, I've seen attempts where members of the community have reached out to other entities to get that intellectual property material that doesn't necessarily belong to any one person that has been a part, as an example, of our language and our culture. Indigenous names of plants, photos of plants, and some other types of historical knowledge that have been curated, if you will, and placed perhaps on a CD-ROM or made otherwise available to members of the public through this entity. And my point would be that these other entities were reaching in to acquire that very same intellectual property that, in my humble opinion, was developed using public funds and therefore should be made available to the general public. I certainly hope that this is the long-term vision of the University of Guam to serve as that online portal not necessarily perhaps for government material that may have been digitized, but for intellectual property that may have been created and or curated with the people's money. So I commend the author for moving in this direction, and I thank Dr. Christ and the university community for being strategic in posturing itself, not just to sustain, but to grow its market share on Guam and throughout the region. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Will Castro. On the main motion, anyone wants to speak? Senator Joseph Augustine, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a co-sponsor of the bill, I like my colleagues that if you've read the letter from Dr. Christ in February 28, 2020, it was almost like a vision. Unfortunately, it was pandemic that caught us, but it was like a vision that they're upgrading their online service, all the computer stuff, and it just worked in favor of what they're doing today, the distant learning. And in support of what they're going to use the funds for, I'd just like to remind our colleagues that this is something we do every year whenever there's money in the account, appropriate to them and get it to them as fast as possible. Unfortunately, the pandemic actually delayed everything. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'm in total support as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Senator San Augustine, on the main motion, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Legislative Secretary. Vice, I apologize. Vice Speaker, you raised your hand. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this legislation. During the public hearing, we did have concerns of how the plan would unfold and what they would do with this money. And really the target goal was to institute online distance learning education. And it would give the University of Guam the capability to expand their reach, not just within our island, but also to provide opportunities to those in the region, within the Marianas, within Micronesia, and within parts of Asia. And so it gives the opportunity for these students to acquire certain skill sets, certain credits from a accredited university of the United States. And also, Madam Speaker, it also gives the ability to provide another footstool for the university to have an additional source of revenue. So not only is the university going to be able to utilize this to help the region, they're also going to be able to acquire additional revenue upon expanding on this program. And we are all very well aware that the University of Guam did also receive some funding because of the impact of COVID for expanding their technological capabilities, especially in light of the events of the COVID impact. So, Madam Speaker, I thank the sponsor of this legislation. I'm glad to be a co-sponsor of it as well. And I'd like to encourage University of Guam to continue to expand their mission and vision so that we can also cater to other areas of the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Vice. Thank you very much, Vice Speaker. Is that a motion on the floor, Vice Speaker? To add you as co-sponsor? If not, anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Legislative Secretary Shelton, you are acknowledged.
Thank you very much,
Speak your
Madam
the
Speaker,
amendment.
and I am quite humbled by the support of our colleagues for this bill. As all of them mentioned, the timeliness of the bill, unfortunately, it is, as I said earlier, more necessary than ever that we give the University of Guam the support to transition into the online learning realm and to encourage the access to research in the region. to help better our community. And so I want to thank the University of Guam for all that they continue to do and for their vision to push through and to use this funding source to benefit our current and our future students and everyone throughout the region. I also want to thank the Guam Economic Development Authority for their time and their work to administer these funds. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to add as co-sponsors to this legislation, Senator Will Castro, Vice Speaker Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, Senator Therese M. Terlahi, Senator Luis Muña, and yourself, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Legislative Secretary. On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. On the motion to put down legislative.
Oh, yes, Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 252-35 into the voting file.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you are now recognized on Bill 251-35 COR.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move to place 251-35, authored by myself and Senator Joe S. San Augustine, an act to appropriate $238,190 from the Guam Community College Endowment Fund Series 2001B to the Guam Community College pursuant to Section 221306 of Article 13 of Chapter 22 of Title V of the Guam Code Annotated for fiscal year 2020 into the third reading file for discussion.
Sijus Masi, Legislative Secretary, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And just like the previous bill we were on as 252 would appropriate money to the University of Guam, 251 appropriates this sum of money to the Guam Community College. It provides the necessary funding for GCC to enhance their technology infrastructure, especially, again, during these precarious times where online learning is transforming and completely essential. Similar to Bill 252, the GCC Endowment Fund Series 2001B is allotted funds from the 1998 Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement that was created by 4 of the largest tobacco companies in America. The funds were set aside through Public Law 25-187, which established the securitization of the tobacco settlement payments to create the GCC Endowment Fund, along with the yoji Higher Education Fund. The fund was last used in 2009, where the proceeds went towards capital improvement projects as well as the acquisition of new technologies. The funds were crucial to the development of GCC and its growth as an institution. GCC's institutional strategic master plan, which guides the college in the next 6 years, entails a great feat in technology advancement. Bill 251 supports this technology directive by allowing us to upgrade GCC's internet capabilities through its fiber optic expansion project. The fiber optic project not only supports online learning framework, but existing and emerging networks such as the college's fire alarm and mass notification systems, camera surveillance, and internet-based services and processes. Bill 251, if passed, will profoundly strengthen the institution's network system capabilities and processes, yielding vast benefits to students, faculty, and staff. Now more than ever, technology leads as the #1 resource educational institutions are improving on. We have an opportunity here to ensure that the Guam Community College receives the necessary funding to continue to support, train, and educate our future island leaders. And with that, Madam Speaker, I ask all of our colleagues again to support this measure, and I'd like to offer one amendment to the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you. The amendment beginning on line 4 of page 2, Section 2, appropriation to the Guam Community College, up to the sum of, and to strike out $238,199.70, and to replace that with $254,640.98, is appropriated from the GCC Endowment Fund Series 2001B as of fiscal year 2019, to the Guam Community College for the enumerated in Section 221306 of Article 13 of Chapter 22 of Title 5 of the Guam Code Annotated. And Madam Speaker, this amendment is based on the testimony from the Guam Economic Development Authority, giving us the updated number of what the 90% of interest that is allowed to be appropriated as of their testimony on January 15th. So from $254,640.77, that is the updated, from that to be changed to $254,640.98.
Thank you, Legislative Secretary, on the amendment. Are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. That's all for me. I welcome again our colleagues' discussion and any amendments to strengthen this legislation.
Sizua Masi, Legislative Secretary. Anybody on the main motion? If Senator Luis Munoz, then Senator Therese Chalayi. On the main motion. Senator Munoz, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, I rise in support of this bill, 251-35, and I thank the author again for helping to support my alumni, of course. And just like in Bill 252, this GCC Education Endowment Fund, the section of law cited in the title of the bill, was created by Public Law 25187. And again, this fund is reserved specifically for the sole benefit of GCC and cannot be used for any other purposes. And going back to the committee report and taking a look, GCC is definitely a model institution and has specifically determined where all these monies were going. So GCC is in definite full support of this bill, as so I'm, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Sizua Masi, Senator Munoz. Senator Therese Chalayi, you are recognized on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am in support of this bill as well, and I just wanted to take a moment to really praise those that came before us in this legislature for their foresight and to set aside these tobacco settlement payments. It was a really big thing for Guam that we were entered into that litigation, and we were able to receive proceeds in as many of the other states did. And so the proceeds for Guam were divided to the Health Security Trust Fund, the UOG Endowment Fund, the GCC Endowment Fund, the Youth Tobacco Education and Prevention Fund, and the Health and Human Services Fund. And with, of course, at that time, they listed, uses that they would like to see with these funds. And of course, very clearly dedicated to bringing up our youth tobacco-free and healthy, and allowing them to succeed in higher education. So I wanted to praise them. It looks like the sponsors were V.C. Pangilinan, S.A. Sanchez, Kaleo Moylan, Joanne Brown, Lawrence Kasperbauer, and the other senators were Frank Uggan, E.C. Bermudez, A.C. Blas, E.B. Calvo, Marcel Camacho, Mark Forbes, A.C. Lamarena V, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, John Salas, and Antonio Pinco, Speaker Pinco. And then I would also like to just also put in a good word again to GCC, because when they came for this hearing, which was in January, I believe, they were very clear what their plan was. It looks like their use of these proceeds are part of as the sponsor indicated, part of a bigger plan by the Guam Community College to use the proceeds to modernize and to make sure that their entire campus and their students were going to receive the benefits of internet capability and all that comes with it. And so I just wanted to thank them for their foresight also, and for their work, their hard work to make sure that that planning comes to fruition. Finally, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to make one technical amendment that I saw in the committee report was suggested by Gita, and that is on page 2 of the bill, line 7, to remove the words 2001B. And so the fund should be described as the GCC Endowment Fund, just the GCC Endowment Fund. So I would remove the word Series 2001B.
On the motion to delete 2000 Series 2001B. On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator Talai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to thank the sponsor again for the bill.
Buen provecho. Anyone else on the main motion? Vice Speaker Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to also rise in support of this bill and also commend GCC for the plans that they have identified for what they would use this money for. We have a very clear, thought-out plan in our committee report, and where certain areas where the internet and fiber connectivity and the campus area network and how it will be installed. So I'd like to thank them for the forward thinking and the planning. It's very rare that we get a detailed plan on how money would be spent, and so I'm very appreciative of this presentation that they provided for us at the public hearing.
Situas Masi, Vice Speaker. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Will Castro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in support of the measure, and I want to thank the authors for acting on it. Madam Speaker, based on the most recent OPA report, having cited GCC as a low-risk auditee for the past 19 years straight, I trust that President Okada, Chairman Frank P. Ariola, and the GCC family will exercise proper fiduciary oversight in the use of these funds for the improvement of the information technology infrastructure. And with that said, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the measure. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator Castro. Senator Regine Biscoli, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to echo the comments of the retiring speaker and also thank GCC for being such great stewards of our taxpayer dollars, as well as so many of the federal dollars that they have been given for many of their projects. Have you seen their campus really transform over the last 10 years under the leadership of Dr. Okada? And at this time, Madam Speaker, I'd also just like to recognize the efforts of the late Carmen Queck Santos, who is really at the helm of ensuring that GCC had clean audits, that they were able to really just transform our community through their mission. And it's people like Carmen who'd really dedicated their lives to making sure that, you know, in her job and the excellence that she provided, not just to the students, but to our entire community, and we really want to commend them for the great work that they've done. And Madam Speaker, I also rise in support of this measure. I thank the author for bringing it forward today, and I encourage my colleagues to please support this bill. Situas Masi.
Buen provecho, Senator Lee. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator San Agustin, I will recognize you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a co-sponsor of the bill, I'm in full support of this. And for many of my colleagues, I was a graduate of the first Guam Police Academy cycle at GCC in 1978. So, if you want to know where they were and where they've gone, and exactly as my colleagues had mentioned earlier, in the last 10 years, the president has no audit findings. I mean, excellent job up there. The leadership of the trustees, everyone has done a great job. They even have the firing range up there. With all the additional money and whatever there's any funds that can help GCC, I urge my colleagues, if you find it, let's introduce it, let's get it to them, because they're the only agency, unfortunately, in the government of Guam, that if you give them $1, they'll make it worth $10. They just have a way of doing that, and that's through federal grants and everything else. You don't normally hear them asking for money during budget. All they ask is keep me status quo so I can keep going. And that's what there have been, and kudos to Dr. Okada and the trustees, the chairman, I think that's Mr. Ariola, and the rest of the management and staff. They do a great job up there, and hope for the best in the near future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator San Augustine. If there's no one else who wishes to speak, Legislative Secretary, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And yes, as all of our colleagues mentioned here today, we are extremely proud of the Guam Community College, all of their work, their leadership, and the awesome multiplier effect that they have in our community and beyond. And I would also like to thank the late Carmen Kwek for her work, partnering, of course, with the legislature to ensure that the Guam Community College had the funding that it needed to serve our island students. I'd also like to thank our colleagues here today for their support of higher education and the students of Guam and of workforce development. And to thank again the Guam Community College and the Guam Economic Development Authority for providing the testimony needed here today to understand the needs and the planning of the Guam Community College, their vision for the future. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to add as co-sponsors of this legislation, yourself, Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, Vice Speaker Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator Teresa M. Terlahi, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, Senator Luis Muñoz, and Senator Will Castro.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing or seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move Bill 251-35 into the voting file.
On that motion, without any objections, motion carries. Legislative Secretary Amanda Shelton, you are recognized on Bill 367-35 LS.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move Bill 367-35 LS, an act relative to the allocation of payments to eligible Guam residents during the state of public health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to be known as the Zura Yumen Gafa Help for Families program, into the third reading file for discussion.
Legislative Secretary, you may proceed.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Madam Speaker, based on the standing rules in section 6.04D3, whenever there's an appropriation, the Committee of the Whole must go into the Committee of the Whole on bills reported to legislature containing any appropriation shall be considered by this legislation. So I make a request to go into Committee of the Whole.
there is a motion to go into Committee of the Whole on
Madam
Bill.
Speaker, point of order. I believe she was citing a rule that does not require a motion. It's an automatic. We go to Committee of Whole if it's an appropriation bill, and I support.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
We will take a moment's recess to set up for a Committee of the Whole. Emina 85 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Legislative Secretary, I'll recognize you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 367-35 to the bottom of the third reading file.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Bill number 162-35 as substituted, Senator Mary Torres.
Madam Speaker, I just want to be clear. We're not in the Committee of the Whole anymore?
No, the senator's just asking to put her bill down. She came and asked me, so yes, we're not in the Committee of the Whole, only because the Legislative Secretary asked that her bill be placed at the bottom of the agenda, and there was no objection. So I'm just going through the second reading file, and that we are now at Bill 162-35
Okay.
as substituted. Am I right, Madam Clerk? 162-35.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place into the third reading file Bill number 162-35. Actually, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I too would like to move, rather than proceeding with my bill, I'd like to move that this be proceeded to the bottom of the file as well, because I believe, Madam Speaker, that the two bills that we have, in addition to my bill, both require a committee of the whole, and perhaps it is more prudent for this body to proceed with that unless that is not the order. I just don't understand how mine would interject between the two. So I believe that the best thing would be to just proceed with the other one and
Thank you.
and make the best use of time.
Thank you, Senator Torres. On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Madam Clerk, what's up on the agenda next? Senator Jim Moylan, you are up on Bill number 9-35.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Considering I was looking at my place at the bottom got removed, so I'm up now on top, but I appreciate that. However, at this time, I also will be needing most likely the committee as a whole, and likewise, rather than be moved to the bottom, and I rather just put Bill 9-35 aside for now, please, Madam Speaker.
Move to set aside on the
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
I just need clarification, because if we go to committee of the whole, I'll be the chair, and I need to know if any of these bills needs committee of the whole, because I did contact, as anticipated from the previous bill, I did contact DOA and BBMR and OFB, and if everybody's going to rush to the bottom, maybe they need to just rush out the door, maybe, and something to consider, but I need to know, so because I'm anticipating folks to start coming down, and if we're not going to do this, then I need to contact them immediately.
We're-
Just a point of information, Madam Speaker.
Majority Leader Vice Speaker Nelson, I will recognize you on a point of order.
Bill 9 is going to impact every other bill that we address with appropriation, because this is a bill that addresses back to October 2019. So it not only impacts today moving forward, this also impacts every appropriation that was done in the past. So perhaps if we can just reconsider the request and move forward. If we're really trying to do this, move forward with Bill 9. Or there was also one of our other colleagues that introduced a similar bill, if we're going to entertain that bill, because it's already up for discussion. And these bills, when we if and when we go into committee of the whole in regards of the BPT dropping it to 4%, it's going to impact everything, not just from today forward. It's going to impact the appropriations we've done in the past. So it would behoove us if we act on Bill 9 now, and then go into committee of the whole and discuss these impacts and see where we're going to cut, if that is the need be, and we put the other bills that need this appropriation after, because there's no sense in doing these bills, addressing our colleague from ASAN and our colleague from Santa Rita. So I think that it would behoove us if we act on this big impact right now.
No,
We're going to take a moment's recess. Emina 85 na legislatura in Guahan is back from recess. Before we broke, there was a motion by Senator Moylan to set aside. Do I have an objection? There is
Point of information, Madam Speaker. Senator Moylan wanted to say something
Right.
first to explain why he's setting it aside. Can you give him that opportunity, please?
Senator, Minority Leader, on a motion, it's not debatable. So he was afforded that opportunity to move to set it aside.
Madam Speaker, it was a recess. It was not afforded him the opportunity to at least explain himself.
Minority Leader, you are out of order. We are on a motion to set aside. Senator Jim Moylan, you can restate your motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Due to the situation of the two bills ahead with 36735 and 16235 to be placed at the bottom of the agenda, moving up 9-35 to the top of the agenda, and at this time with the committee as a whole coming on in, I respectfully request, due to several amendments that I am still working on at this time, since this bill was last introduced in January, to set aside 9-35 at this time. Thank
So
you, Madam Speaker.
that's a motion, Senator Moylan, just to be clear with all my colleagues, a motion to set aside. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
On the motion to set aside, is there an objection? There is an objection, colleagues. All those who is in support of setting Bill 9 aside, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. You don't- Colleagues, we are going to take a moment's recess to set up in the Committee of the Whole. I understand, and I will note for the record to my colleagues, the Oversight Chair on OFB will preside, and he has called the members in. Thank you very much. We are in recess.
The Committee of the Whole is called to order. The Committee of the Whole is called to order for Bill number 9-35 LS. I'd like to introduce the panel that are present, but prior to that, I'd ask Sergeant Arms to please, I'd ask the panel to please rise so that you be sworn in. Thank you, Sergeant Arms. My colleagues, and to the people of Guam, the panel consists of, to my right is Mr. Lester Carlson, the Director of BBMR, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. And we have, to his right, is Mr. Ed Byrne, the Director of Department Administration. To my immediate left is the Director of the Office of Finance and Budget, Mr. Steve Guerrero. And to his immediate left is Vanessa Valencia, who's the analyst at the Office of Finance and Budget. At this point, I will read the rules of engagement. We will start first with the introduction of the bill by the sponsor. We have 2 rounds of questions. Colleagues, members are allowed 5 minutes, not including the response. 5 minutes. The time will be kept by the clerk, and I'll be advised if the time has reached that point. After questions, the panel will be dismissed. 4 amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk of the legislature and distributed to the clerks of the legislature, and then you'll see it on your computers. And then we'll proceed with the sponsor to close on his bill and a motion to rise. I now ask Senator Jim Moylan to please introduce his bill and make his opening statement. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the panel. Mr. Chairman, of course, we understand that this Bill 935 was moved up on the agenda after 367 and 162 had successfully moved theirs to the bottom of the list. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I had previously requested to set aside Bill 935 into motion, which failed. Obviously, Mr. Chairman, I do need time to make amendments to this bill, and it's disappointing, and I feel it's unfair that I wasn't allowed that time, as I seen my other colleagues were. So obviously, Mr. Chairman, I feel I'm being sabotaged in this position. It is not fair, and therefore, Mr. Chairman, I withdraw Bill 9-35.
My colleagues, there's a motion on the floor to withdraw Bill 9.
Mr. Chairman, I believe by withdrawing, it's not a motion. I withdraw 9-35. Not a motion, Mr. Chair.
Colleagues, we will recess. I make sure that I've got that sent to me if it's in the on file with the clerk. Thank you. My colleagues, we are back from recess to the Committee of the Whole. Madam Speaker, you should be in receipt of the withdrawal letter. If you could please read that out loud, please.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair, from the office of Senator James Jim C. Moylan, affidavit Speaker Barnes dated June 10, 2020. Pursuant to Section 7.04E of the Standing Rules of Imina 35 na Legislature in Guam, we kindly request you take this as an official memo, official request to withdraw Bill Number 9-35 LS, an act to repeal Section 2 of Public Health 34-116 and to amend Section 26202 A, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, J1, and J2 of Chapter 26, Title 11, Guam Code, annotated relative to reducing the business privilege tax from 5% to 4%. Thank you for your time and consideration. Have a wonderful day. Respectfully, James C. Moreland, stamped and received by the Speaker Tina Rose Munoz Barnes' office, June 10th, 2020, 4:37 p.m. Also, Mr. Chair, to note that it was also sent to the Committee on Rules, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleagues, that motion has been made and received. There is no debate
Withdrawal.
on that motion.
It's a withdrawal.
Senator,
It's a withdrawal, sir.
so the withdrawal
Has been received.
has been received.
There's nothing there.
And there's not, okay. Senator Lee, you have a point of personal privilege? You wanted to,
Sujos Masi, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I feel compelled to rise to defend this body against an untrue and unsubstantiated attack on our collective character. Mr. Chair, the notion that the legislature is in a position to debate the lowering of the BPT as a result of, quote,
Point of order,
sabotage
Mr.
has
Chair,
no
where are we?
factual information and no factual foundation. Mr. Chair, the author of this measure introduced the bill
was
in
withdrawn.
January of
Senator Therese, you're out of order. We're listening to
Mr.
point of
Chair,
privilege.
a point of personal
Point of
privilege.
order,
Where are we
Mr.
on,
Chair.
Mr.
The
Chair?
bill has already been withdrawn. Mr. Chair, point of order. The bill has been withdrawn.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'm still on my point of personal privilege.
Thank you. Please continue.
Sujos Masi. The author of this measure introduced the bill in January of last year. Mr. Chair, that's January 2019. If the author is not in a position to amend the legislation 17 months later, that's not because of a conspiracy against the bill. The author of Bill 9 is the one who proposed that this measure be added to our agenda today.
Point of information, Mr.
Not
Chair.
on the first day of session.
The author of the bill felt he
Today.
was being sabotaged. So point of information.
Senator Tello, you're out of order. She's already been recognized for point of privilege, personal
I was
privilege.
just talking about a bill
Can we
that's
just
been
allow-
withdrawn.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair.
point of
No,
order.
this is a
Mr.
point of
Chairman,
personal privilege.
I'm going to ask for legal counsel's intervention in interpreting the rules. Come on, we're not going to allow this.
Just a point of personal privilege, Mr.
Chairman,
Chair.
if I may cite the grounds from which you may cite point of personal privilege, in no way was a comment meant to impugn the character or the object or the responsibility or job of any member of this body, to include me.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
still have the
Chairman,
point of personal privilege.
I'm going to motion to overrule the chair. This is not acceptable. Joe, come on. Let's not grandstand. You want to kill him on
I'm
the media?
sorry,
then-
Mr. Chair, I still have the floor.
My
Mr.
colleagues,
Chairman.
we will recess and I'll get with legal
Thank
to
you,
get
Mr.
it cleared.
Chair. Thank
Okay?
you.
my colleagues, after seeking legal advice, they asked that non-debatable, it could have gone either direction, and they asked that because the bill has been withdrawn, the discussion on Bill 9 has ended. Okay, so if anything, Senator Lee, I understand where you're coming from, but legal said it could go either way, and that being said, so that we can move on to the other bills, because I understand where you're coming from, what you said. But
Mr. Chair,
I just
just
don't want us to
again,
debate it any further.
a point of personal privilege. There was a comment made
Understood, but I'm just saying is that,
about the legislature.
okay,
And so not on the
It's
bill
not
itself, not on the bill itself.
Mr. Chair, please
Not on the bill
order, Mr.
itself.
Chair. You got legal advice
Ma-
that it does not apply.
Senator Lee, legal has given me advice, like I've stated. The debate has ended. Senator,
It's, Mr. Chair, it's clear they don't want to hear what I have to say because when you
Mr.
speak
Chair,
the truth,
point of order,
many
Mr.
times
Chair.
people try to
Mr. Chair,
shut you
point
down.
of
Okay,
order.
thank you. Senator Amanda, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we remain in the Committee of the Whole to discuss Bill 367-35.
No objection. No
Are there
objection.
any objections?
No objection.
No objection. We will now have a quick recess. I'm going to contact DRT because you did ask that earlier for DRT to be here. So I did contact Daphne. I just need to know if she's outside or not. Quick recess. My colleagues, we have returned from recess and back to the Committee of the Whole. I would ask on Bill 367-35 LS, I'd ask the Ms. Daphne Shimizu to please rise to be sworn in by the Sergeant Arm. Thank you, Sergeant Arms. I remind the panel that you still all under oath. I will now, I remind my colleagues, we will have the introduction of the bill by the sponsor, 2 rounds of questions. Member allowed 5 minutes, not including response. And then after the question, we will dismiss the panel, and floor amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk of the legislature so that everyone can see it on their laptop or their device. And then we'll ask the sponsor to close and with the motion to rise with a recommendation. All right? I will now ask Senator Amanda Shelton to please introduce her bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Bill number 367-35 LS, an act relative to the allocation of payments to eligible Guam residents during the state of public health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, to be known as the Adzuda y Mengafa Help for Families program, was introduced by myself, Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes, Vice Speaker Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator Regine Bisco Lee, Senator Jose Pito Terlahi, and Senator Kelly Marsh Taitino. Mr. Chair, Bill number 367 was introduced in response to COVID-19. As all of us are aware, just a few months ago, many businesses were shut down, and as a result, people throughout our island lost their jobs, lost hours working, were furloughed, and left in very, very vulnerable situations. Additionally, both the federal and local government have provided direct cash payments to assist individuals and businesses. However, these aid packages have left out substantial categories of individuals, leaving families without assistance. These aid packages do not provide direct stimulus payments to families with dependents over the age of 16 years old. Bill 367 will establish the Adzuda y Mengafa Help for Families program. We on Guam are a very tight-knit community. We take care of one another, and we know the value and the importance of community. Thousands continue to struggle daily as our economy remains at a standstill, with many receiving little to no income to support themselves and their families. I know we can all also recall a few weeks ago realizing that the federal help was not coming fast enough, and so many of us in this body supported an attempt to provide some kind of assistance to fill the gap, which was Bill 340, the RISE Act. And now today we're here to address Bill 367-35, which would also help to ease some of the adverse impacts of the pandemic for so many who have been left out. This program authorizes a one-time $500 payment to Guam families with young adult dependents and individuals with disabilities. If you have a dependent or you are a dependent over the age of 16, at this moment, the federal stimulus payments do not include you. For example, for families with a high school senior who just graduated a few days ago, or a college student who still lives at home is supported by their parents, or an adult child who is an individual with a disability who is still considered a dependent. The federal stimulus package leaves these categories out. Mr. Chair, it is common for families on Guam to support their young children pursuing their post-high school education and carry them as dependents for tax purposes. Yet thousands of families again have not received a cash stimulus payment for their excluded dependents. The Azuda Imengafa Help for Families program embodies our island value of supporting our family units and leaving no one behind. It is also a representation of the importance of taking care of each other during these very, very trying times. From my estimates, Mr. Chair, there are about 4,000 students within the Department of Education who qualify under these categories, who are over the age of 16 and still dependents of their parents. And nearly 4,000 students of the Guam Community College and the University of Guam who are qualified dependents of their parents as well. And many other families who care for and carry as dependents their adult relative with disabilities. These families have been overlooked and excluded by law from the earlier stimulus package, and Bill 367-35 corrects that. In April, Mr. Chair, my office received a call from a grandmother. Her name was Rose. She, like many others, were worried about the economic impact of this pandemic and the ability for the family to send their recent high school graduate to college. Rose said she was calling all 15 of her senators to help provide something for this group of young people and their families who were left out of assistance. I want to thank Rose and her family, Villaflor and Senan Valencia and their young adult children who shared their concerns and support for this bill, parents expressing their concern on our morning talk shows who we heard, members of the Guam Youth Congress who advocated for this legislation, numerous students from the University of Guam and the Community College. I want to thank them for calling us to action today. It was very clear that this is the least that we can do to support our Manhoban and our Mangafa at this time, and I ask our colleagues to support this legislation to help our families. Siduas Masi, Mr. Chair, and I also want to thank all of the panel who are here today to provide answers to any questions that our colleagues might have. And before I close, I'd like to move into the record a letter from Mr. Lester Carlson, who's also here today, a testimony on the bill that I've sent to the clerks to be uploaded into the Google Drive.
Thank you, Senator Shelton.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair? Could we have a
Senator
minute so
Tell.
we, yeah, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we have a minute so that we can review that testimony? Is it already uploaded that we can review it? Take a short recess to review it?
All right, we'll take a minute or two to make sure it's loaded. Thank you. My colleagues, if you look at the drive, it says 61020 ALS motions to adjourn. Okay. Okay. My colleagues, we're back from recess. You'll find it on the drive. It'll say 6.10.20 ALS motion to append to bill number 367-35 LS. .pdf. Okay. We will now begin the questions, and we will begin from my farthest left, from Senator Moylan, and then work our way across until we complete all my colleagues. Senator Moynihan, do you have any
Thank-
questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just started on the first paragraph of Mr. Carlson's letter, but I would like, maybe it would help our body here, if Mr. Carlson could summarize his letter or just read it verbatim, that will be helpful.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. The letter is addressed to the Honorable Amanda Shelton. It comes from me and it begins, Dear Senator Shelton, Afades and Saludas. I'm writing to express my support for the Ayuda y Mangafa Help for Families program as proposed by your Bill 367-35. The measure intends to provide direct assistance payments of $500 to those families with young adult, students, and disabled individuals who are claimed as dependents of these families and who are omitted under the current federal economic impact payments. The Bureau confirms the omission of these three qualifying groups that are indicated to be eligible for assistance under the proposed program. As you know, the cost impact of the bill could be at least $4 million based upon your estimated count of 8,000 students/disabled individuals that are qualified dependents of their parents. It is vital that any proposed legislation that may cause a fiscal impact on government resources also identify a fund source. In this regard, the Bureau is pleased that Section 5 of the bill would authorize Imagahagan Guam to transfer up to $10 million to the Department of Revenue and Taxation to administer the program, and also provides for 4 possible funding sources as options to fund the program payments. With these proposed funding options, the Bureau should be able to identify the available funds to cover the cost requirements of the program. In light of the current COVID-19 pandemic, the Bureau supports the intent of Bill 367 with the proposed funding options intact to provide the direct assistance to these individuals and families omitted from the current federal stimulus program. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me, signed by myself, Lester Carlson. And if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add one more piece of information. I was contacted by Senator San Augustine's office today to ask specifically whether or not the CARES Act funding that the governor received could be a potential fund source for this measure. We are here today to affirm that the federal stimulus funding is supported by Governor Leon Guerrero as a fund source for this program. So there will be no fiscal impact. Thank you, Senator, for asking the very important question as to whether or not this would have an impact on fiscal 20 revenues. The governor has committed, and we are here to convey that message, that she will find the funding necessary to address the omission of these 3 categories of individuals. We also did our own research just to ascertain that this was in fact done, and I can confirm that our research has also come to the same conclusion as Senator Shelton. So for the record, federal stimulus money from the CARES Act will be what it is that we use to fund this.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Senator Moynihan, do you have any other question, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. We are using federal stimulus money, none of the general fund money, to fund this bill.
That's correct, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moynihan. Senator Will Castro, sir, do you have any questions, sir?
No questions, Mr. Chairman, at this time, but if I'd like to enter some supporting statements into the record, if that's okay? Or do you want me to hold? Just some comments in support of the measure. Would that be appropriate? Thank you. I want to thank the principal author and the other authors who assigned this name to their measure. I'm extremely appreciative of the fact that you took into consideration those individuals who are 16 or older and with disabilities. Being the father of a college student as well, because that's one of the provisions covered in this measure, unless I'm mistaken, I thank you also for thinking about them, those who are full-time students, who almost always forego employment if they're enrolled full-time in a college or university. And I guess in this case, there's a provision for those who are working on the farmland. Thank you for that. I think now more than ever, Mr. Chairman, and to the prime sponsor, this form of stimulus couldn't come at a better time. While we experience students going to school all the time, we're in a very peculiar state in the history of the territory. Not only for the parents who may have reduced hours or completely lost their jobs, but for these students who otherwise would need to go to work to help supplement income for that household. Many of them don't have a choice. And so I thank you for working with the administration. Oftentimes, the success of a measure is dependent on the political will of the executive branch, and it's always good to see that you have the cooperation of this administration to at least work with identifying the funds, actually to at least acknowledge that they have identified the funds. Thank you for doing the work to the prime sponsor and acquiescing, or at least saying that this is viable. And so with that said, I rise in support of the measure, and if any questions arise, I'll wait for the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Speaker Tina Muñoz-Barnes. Ma'am, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time, Mr. Chair. I do have a comment for later on the second round, so if you can, I can yield my time at this time.
All right. Senator Kelly, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Hungin. Sujus Masi, everybody who is here. So if I could ask the Department of Revenue and Taxation, thank you for making it over here. What are the steps that are going to need to be taken to provide this stimulus? Can you outline what needs to be done to develop, implement, and distribute the stimulus program?
Thank you. Hello? Okay. Thank you, Senator Marsh, for that question. With regards to this particular program, the way that we read Bill 367-35, I'm sorry. Okay. The way we read Bill 367-35 is if you look at Section 2A, there is going to be an application process, and so there is going to be an application that will be created in order for people to apply and for revenue tax to approve. And so, of course, first there would have to be an application that's created that would be in line with whatever the final bill or the law requires, and that would have to be submitted to the Department of Revenue and Taxation. Because of our current, of course, the situation we are with the pandemic, as we were reading through this, our team had, I guess our recommendation for how we would move forward is we would want to make sure that things would be done online as much as possible. That's something that's not new to us. We've done such already with the online form that we have for the non-filers, and that's already available on our website. We have not talked with our systems people about this, but that's something we'll have to do. And so, of course, once we're able to get that form, and again, the reason why we want to move toward using an electronic type of an application, and excuse me, I'm sorry if you cannot hear me. The reason why we want to move toward an online application form is multiple reasons. One, because we want to eliminate the need for our people to have to, during this pandemic, expose themselves to the possibility of being exposed because of the novel coronavirus. And two, because it would make the process more efficient. And so then we wouldn't have a manual process in order to have to, again, accept those and have to enter them in such system. And so, and from there, of course, once applications would be approved based on that system, and then we would move forward with, processing payments. But that's, again, based on our read of the current bill, how we propose that this would occur.
Sujus Masi Pera and now. So what is the timeline that you estimate will take? I mean, this would be very helpful for people who qualify to understand the more that we can manage their expectations and how this will operate.
Sorry, ma'am. So that's a little bit difficult to say. I know that in the bill, there is a proposed 30-day, I guess the application period would be 30 days. Our team, of course, we recognize as well,
just like, of course, our legislative body recognizes the importance of making sure payments get out to our people as soon as possible. That's been something that in terms of what we've done with the economic impact payments and actually with all of the programs that we operate, that we've, again, done our best to try to make payments out to our people as soon as possible. And I know that that's the intent of our legislative body. It's difficult to say, again, without kind of going back to our systems and also kind of getting an input from our systems people on how we would be able to do this. But I mean, we definitely will work to get this done as soon as possible. Again, I don't have a specific timeline, and I apologize, but it's difficult to say, and but we will do our best to get it out as soon as possible.
Was that sufficient, Senator Kelly? Okay.
In looking at the bill, which I'm in support, I'm a co-sponsor, and I definitely like the way that it was promoted. It's saying that, this recognizes our island values of our supporting each other. These were categories that were left out, and we do want to make sure that we're helping families survive and the children and the young adults that depend on them. With the age categories, do these follow other standard categories, just so that we understand them, going between the ages of 17 to 19, 20 to 24, and then my reading is individuals with disabilities 17 and older. Do those follow other standard types of age categories that you work with?
Yes, Senator. So for with regards to being able to claim a dependent, and most especially even for the purpose of getting the education credit for college students, the 19 to 24 is something that is used. And of course, we know that the EIP, the stimulus payments that were done out of the CARES Act, they only allowed for dependents who were ages 16 and under. And so, those dependents, you can have actual high school students who are age 17 and 18 who, because of their age, of course, were not able to qualify their parents or the individuals who are claiming them for the economic impact payment. So this particular bill would actually, in terms of at least providing for those families who have students, again, ages 17 and 18, and then also those students children who are dependents who are going to college that are ages 19 to 24, this particular bill would be able to provide for that. It would also be able to provide for those individuals who are individuals with disabilities who, again, one of the questions that we got and we're continuing to get is, why is it that individuals who are dependents and they have a disability and are able to be claimed as a dependent because of it, not able to be or avail, or parents, they're individuals who are claiming them are not able to take that, and that's because, of course, the CARES Act didn't allow for that. So those are the three categories which, in Mr. Carlson's testimony or his letter to Senator were indicated, and those are not included in the economic impact payments that were provided for by the CARES Act.
For those individuals with disabilities, so it's good to hear that this is fitting within something that's standardized and already kind of understood with these age categories. Is this going to be difficult for the parents, or is that already something that's established? Again, we want to make sure that we're taking care of these families. So would there be any impediments that you see for them demonstrating that they have an individual with disability that's a dependent in their household, or is that something they already claim?
So currently, with regards to our Form 1040s, you cannot tell from a Form 1040 if a dependent is actually an individual with a disability. However, what we're seeing now with regards to even our non-filer form, which people are submitting, where they're working to claim their dependents who have a disability, we're actually seeing that people are providing some form of documentation Now, it's not clear to me what exactly the proper documentation would be for that, but that's something, again, that as we work through the application process and perhaps as we work with DISID or the other organizations who are able to assist us with that determination, because, again, that's not our area of expertise, that we would, perhaps work with them to make sure that the definition is appropriate.
Senator Kelly, excuse me, but my colleagues, we're going to have to recess for 15 minutes. MIS needs to reset the recording. All right? Thank you.